Okay, so get this. At the exact same time that the US and Iran are supposedly having these crucial nuclear talks, Iran goes and conducts military exercises in one of the most vital waterways on the entire planet. So what is going on here? Is this real diplomacy, or is it some kind of elaborate deception? Let's try and unpack it.
I mean, this is a classic move, right? You've got the hand of peace extended on one side, but on the other, they're brandishing a sword. So the big question for all of us is, which one is the real message? All right, so first let's just lay out the two big things that happened literally at the same time, because they seem to send a completely contradictory signal to the world.
Okay, so on the one hand, you've got what's happening in Geneva. This is the quiet, behind-the-scenes stuff, mediators trying to find some kind of common ground on Iran's nuclear program. That's the signal that says, hey, we're de-escalating. But then, at the same time, over in the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is running these massive military drills. And look, this isn't just some routine practice. This is a loud, impossible-to-miss projection of military might right in the world's most important oil shipping lane.
Okay, so you might be thinking, why does a military exercise in this one spot cause such a global panic? Well, it's because the Strait of Hormuz isn't just any body of water. It is, without a doubt, one of the most strategically critical locations on Earth.
Yeah, the official term for a place like this is a choke point, and honestly, it's the perfect name for it. Think of it like a bottleneck for global trade, especially for energy. If you squeeze this passage, even for just a few hours, the financial shockwaves can be felt literally all over the globe. It's that serious.
So how much are we talking about, really? Well, a huge slice of the world's daily oil supply has to pass through this one tiny channel. And what that means is you don't even have to do anything to cause chaos. Just the threat of a disruption is enough to make shipping insurance premiums go through the roof and force companies to find super expensive new routes. A shot doesn't even need to be fired to hurt the global economy.
And this quote really just nails the strategy here. It's not about actually starting a war, it's about sending a message. It's Iran showing the world, and you better believe the negotiators in Geneva, that they hold the keys to a critical economic artery. It is an incredibly powerful way to remind everyone of the leverage they have, and they did it all without firing a single shot.
Okay, so what if we're looking at this all wrong? What if these signals aren't contradictory at all? What if they're both part of the same performance? There's this really fascinating theory from political scientist John Mearsheimer that suggests what we're actually watching is a kind of political theater.
Yeah, Mearsheimer calls it a kabuki dance. Like the traditional Japanese theater that's all about elaborate, stylized drama. And his argument is basically this. What we're seeing isn't a real attempt to solve the problem. It's a highly choreographed performance where each side is just playing a role for the audience, which is, well, the rest of the world.
So, the heart of this theory, the real kicker, is that a genuine deal might just be impossible from the get-go. And why is that? Because the fundamental demands from the key players, we're talking the US, Iran, and especially allies like Israel, they're just so completely far apart that there's really no realistic middle ground to be found. So the talks, they become more about managing how things look than actually getting a breakthrough.
All right, so if this is all just a big show, how does this kabuki dance theory actually explain the specific moves everyone is making? Let's dive into the rules of leverage that are at play here. This analogy just makes the gap between them crystal clear. Think about it. The US and Iran might be able to agree on negotiating a fine, a deal with some compromises, like limited enrichment in exchange for tough inspections. But key allies like Israel, they want to dismantle the whole car. We're talking zero enrichment, a scaled-back missile program, and end to Iran's support for proxies in the region. These aren't just different starting points for a negotiation. They are two fundamentally different conversations.
And this is where Iran's logic becomes perfectly clear. Look, in a straight-up military fight with the US, Iran is at a huge disadvantage. But they have an ace up their sleeve, an asymmetric advantage. It's like they know they can't win the boxing match in the ring, but they can threaten to cut the power to the entire stadium. By flexing their muscle in the Strait of Hormuz, they're reminding everybody that an attack on them would trigger a global economic meltdown.
And believe me, it's not just a two-player game. It gets way more complicated. Mearsheimer points out that the US president, in this case Trump, is basically trapped. He wants to avoid another big war, but he's also under immense political pressure from his allies. And on top of that, you've got other major players like China and Russia who have their own strategic and economic interests in the region. That makes any kind of simple military solution pretty much impossible.
So when you put all of this together,
The impossible demands, the military posturing, the global politics. It leads us to a really powerful and kind of provocative question about what these talks are really for.
Just think about this for a second. What if the real goal of these negotiations isn't peace at all, but risk management? What if nobody at the table actually believes a real lasting deal is even possible right now? Maybe the point isn't to solve the problem, but just to manage it, to keep the whole thing from exploding.
And this is exactly what that risk management diplomacy looks like in the real world. You use the talks to buy yourself some time. You use them to get your allies in position. You use them to control the public story, the narrative. And maybe most importantly, you use them to prepare for the day when it all falls apart. So in this view, diplomacy isn't some noble path to peace. It's just another weapon in a long, drawn-out conflict.
So let's just bring this all full circle. That military exercise in the Strait of Hormuz, it wasn't just some random detail. It was a full sentence in a very, very tense political conversation that's happening between Hormuz and Geneva. It's Iran speaking the only language that really matters in this game, the language of leverage.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty sobering thought. When you look at these deep divisions and all the strategic reasons pushing everyone towards a conflict, Mearsheimer's analysis suggests the risk of this whole thing spiraling out of control is incredibly real. So maybe the ultimate question isn't how do we find peace, but who, if anyone, can actually stop it.